Hello viewers, today we are going to start a new chapter, hemodynamic disorders, thromboembolic disease and shock. In this, the first topic is edema and effusion. So edema, we know that extravasation of fluid into the interstitial space or the interstitium is called as edema. And when the serosal surface is involved, then the fluid accumulates in the body cavities. It is called as effusion. So let us see what are the various factors or the forces that influence the fluid movement across the capillary wall. This is the capillary bed, this is the arterial end, this is the venous end. And these two factors, the hydrostatic pressure and plasma colloid osmotic pressure. So these are the two opposing forces. Hydrostatic pressure, it tends to push the water and salts out from the capillaries into the interstitium, whereas the plasma colloid osmotic pressure, it tends to pull back water and salts into the vasculature or in the capillaries. So these two opposing forces, they are balanced. So there is no net loss of fluid, or even if there is loss of fluid, it is very small in amount into the interstitium, and this small amount of fluid that is lost into the interstitium, it is drained by the lymphatic vessels. These lymphatic vessels drain this fluid to the thoracic duct, and this is ultimately returned back to the circulation through the left subclavian vein. So by this diagram we can make out the causes. What can be the causes of edema? So if hydrostatic pressure is increased, so it will lead to edema. Also, if plasma colloid osmotic pressure is decreased, it will lead to edema. And if the capacity of the lymphatic vessels to drain the excess fluid is compromised due to obstruction or any other causes, then also it will lead to edema. And also if the vascular permeability is increased, as in cases of inflammation, then also fluid and proteins and also cells, they will move out into the interstitium, and this will lead to edema. So edema can be caused by inflammatory causes as well as by non-inflammatory causes. So when edema is due to inflammation, the fluid, we call it exudate. It is protein rich fluid, and transudate is protein poor. The cause is hemodynamic disorder. It is seen in heart diseases, renal disease, malnutrition, liver diseases. So basically these two opposing forces are involved in the causes which are non-inflammatory. So let us now discuss the pathophysiologic categories of edema. So first is the increased hydrostatic pressure, second is reduced plasma osmotic pressure, lymphatic obstruction, inflammation. These we have discussed. And fifth one is the sodium and water retention. Now let us take up the examples or the causes in the individual category one by one. So increased hydrostatic pressure, it can be due to impaired venous return, the important causes are congestive heart failure, constrictive pericarditis, then ascites to liver cirrhosis, venous obstruction. It can be due to thrombosis or any external compression. For example, if there is deep vein thrombosis, then it will be localized edema in the leg. And in case of congestive heart failure, constrictive pericarditis, so it will lead to a generalized edema or anasarca. Generalized edema is also called as anasarca. Other is arteriolar dilation due to heat or neurohumoral dysregulation. The next is the reduced plasma osmotic pressure. So albumin, it comprises almost half of the plasma protein, total plasma protein. So if albumin synthesis is decreased or it is lost from the body, then it will lead to reduced plasma osmotic pressure. So first is malnutrition. Second is liver cirrhosis. So in these conditions there will be decreased synthesis of albumin, and albumin can be lost by two ways, by gastroenteropathy or by glomerulopathy, where it is lost in the urine, for example in nephrotic syndrome. So protein losing glomerulopathy, for example nephrotic syndrome, in which the glomerular capillaries, they are excessively permeable, so that the albumin, it comes out in urine. The protein losing gastroenteropathy. Next is lymphatic obstruction. So the causes can be inflammatory, neoplastic, post-surgical, post-irradiation. So all these conditions may lead to lymphatic obstruction. For example, filariasis, it causes the obstruction or obstructive fibrosis of the, it causes obstructive fibrosis of the lymphatic vessels and the lymph nodes, and there is edema of the external genitalia and the leg, and this edema is so much massive that it is termed as elephantiasis. Elephantiasis. So any condition that disrupts the lymphatic vessels and impairs the clearance of the interstitial fluid will lead to lymphedema formation. Next is the sodium and water retention. So excessive causes are excessive salt intake with renal insufficiency, increased tubular reabsorption of sodium, it can occur due to renal hypoperfusion, or increased renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So primary renal disorders can also lead to increased sodium and water retention, and this is also seen in congestive heart failure, because congestive heart failure leads to renal hypoperfusion, and this stimulates the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, which retains or the sodium, and obligatory the water is also retained. So this tries to increase the intravascular volume. So what happens? The intravascular volume is increased, so the hydrostatic pressure also increases. And due to dilution, as the water is also retained, so there is dilution and the plasma colloid osmotic pressure decreases. So instead of helping, it exacerbates the edema. Next is the inflammation. The cause can be acute, chronic, and in healing, angiogenesis. The new blood vessels are leaky vessels. So now let us discuss the mechanism of systemic edema in heart failure, renal failure, liver failure, and in malnutrition. So this flow chart, it shows the mechanism of systemic edema in heart failure, renal failure, malnutrition, liver failure, and in nephrotic syndrome. So in heart failure, what happens is there is increase in the capillary hydrostatic pressure, and this leads to edema formation. Also due to heart failure, there is renal hypoperfusion, or there is decreased renal blood flow, and this leads to activation of the renin angiotensin system, and this leads to sodium and water retention. So the main purpose of sodium and water retention is to increase the renal blood flow. Now there is increase in the blood volume, this leads to edema. So as this was told to you, so this increased blood volume, it increases the hydrostatic pressure, which contributes to edema, and due to dilution, due to retention of water, there is decrease in the plasma colloid osmotic pressure. So this further exacerbates the edema. And in malnutrition, decreased hepatic synthesis of albumin, and in nephrotic syndrome, all these conditions lead to decreased plasma albumin levels, and this leads to decrease in the plasma osmotic pressure, which contributes to edema formation. Also in primary renal failure, there is sodium and water retention, which leads to edema. Now let us quickly see the clinical features and the morphology of edema.
Morphology and clinical features of edema. We can easily recognize edema grossly, and on microscopy it appears as clearing and separation of the extracellular matrix and some cellular swelling, and the most common sites are the subcutaneous tissues, lungs, and the brain. The subcutaneous edema can be diffuse or it can be localized to regions which have high hydrostatic pressure. So the distribution of edema is affected by gravity. For example, on standing, it appears in the legs, and in recumbent or in lying down position, it appears in the sacral region. This is termed as dependent edema. When we apply pressure over the edematous region, the interstitial tissue, it gets displaced, leaving a depression which is called as pitting edema. This is the pitting edema. And edema in renal diseases, it appears in parts of body containing loose connective tissue, such as the eyelids. So this is periorbital edema. It is a characteristic finding in severe renal diseases. So pulmonary edema. The causes of pulmonary edema are left ventricular failure, renal failure, acute respiratory distress syndrome, pulmonary infections or inflammation, hypersensitivity reactions. So in pulmonary edema, the lungs are enlarged, often 2 to 3 times their normal weight, and on cutting, the lung yields frothy blood-tinged fluid, which is a mixture of air, edema fluid, and extravasated RBCs. So pulmonary edema impedes gaseous exchange, leading to hypoxemia, and this also creates a favorable environment for bacterial infections. So here in this microphotograph, we can see the edematous alveolar septa. These are the edematous alveolar septa, and in the alveolar spaces is the edema fluid, this pinkish fluid is the edema fluid. Next is the brain edema. Brain edema, it can be localized or generalized. In localized brain edema, the causes are abscess, neoplasm, and generalized can be due to encephalitis, hypertensive crisis, obstruction to brain venous outflow. Trauma can cause localized or generalized edema depending on the nature and extent of the injury. In generalized edema, the brain is swollen with narrowed sulci. These are the sulci which are narrowed, and distended gyri. These are the gyri. These are distended. This shows signs of flattening against unyielding skull. Brain edema can be rapidly fatal. As the brain substance, it can herniate through foramen magnum, or the brainstem vascular supply can get compressed, leading to death. Effusions. So the collection of fluid in the serous cavities is called as effusion. So collection of fluid in pleural cavity is hydrothorax. In pericardial cavity, it is hydropericardium. In peritoneal cavity, it is hydroperitoneum or ascites. So these are various types of effusions. Transutative effusions, these are protein poor, they are translucent and straw colored. Chylous effusions are milky, they are caused by lymphatic blockage. Exudative effusions are protein rich and cloudy due to presence of WBCs. The effusions, they are also prone to seeding by bacteria, leading to serious and fatal infections.
So in this video, we discussed the pathophysiologic categories of edema, the morphology and the clinical features in edema and effusions. So this was all about edema and effusions. I hope you liked the video. For more such videos, please subscribe my YouTube channel and do not forget to like and share my videos. Thanks for watching.